Marathon Pharmaceuticals says it will charge $89,000 a year for a muscular dystrophy drug the FDA just approved for sale. The move is raising questions again about skyrocketing drug prices, especially since this drug has been available in the UK for just around $1,600 a year. Joining us to discuss is WSJ Health reporter Joe Walker. Hi, Joe. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
First off, will you tell us a little bit more about this drug and who it's meant to treat?
Sure. So it's a corticosteroid that is like a lot of different corticosteroids that people use for inflammation, and it's used for it can be used for multi-purposes, but in this case, it's been approved for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a very rare disease where affecting mostly young boys and young men, where their muscles deteriorate to the point of wasting away.
So this drug called DEFLAZACORT, I believe, would be available to treat what, roughly about 12,000 cases of it in the U.S.?
Yeah, there's about 12,000 people in the U.S. that have it,
Right.
I think.
So it's a small group of people, but this group of people is not foreign to this drug, correct? Some of them have already been using it?
Yeah. So we don't have exact numbers on this, but we think maybe 6 to 9% of people have been using this drug by purchasing it overseas, mostly through an online pharmacy based in the United Kingdom.
And they were paying around $1,600 a year.
Yeah,
they told you?
It varies. It varies depending on sort of your weight, because there's different doses, but like $1,200 to $600 a year.
Right. And so then how can Marathon justify the enormous price difference between their version of the drug, which I believe they're going to be calling Emflaza, is that right? And the version that's been selling in the UK?
Well, so companies typically will justify prices or try to justify prices by talking about how much money they spend on R&D and drug development and so on. Marathon wouldn't say how much it's spent on this. I think, though, that what they would say is, number one, that the drug hasn't been available to, or hasn't been used by most people in the U.S. because it's not sold here, and that they went to the trouble and to the expense of going through the FDA regulatory process, which isn't free.
Right.
And so.
But they built on research that had already been done in the 90s,
That's right.
Correct? So one can extrapolate that perhaps they didn't spend a ton of money on that research since it had already been done.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, they didn't discover the drug or have to do large phase 3 trials as many companies do. So their expenses are probably much lower.
Right. Now, why can't the U.S. patients who'd been buying the drug through this UK online pharmacy continue to do so?
So the pharmacy informed patients over the past several months that they would stop shipping it to the U.S. once the drug was approved and sold by Marathon. We've asked the pharmacy and the FDA about whether there are legal restrictions that would disallow the pharmacy from selling it here, but we're still waiting to hear back on that.
Okay. Now, chances are, you say that insurers will eventually pay for this, even though they haven't yet come out and said so.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. All insurers are different, but it is an FDA-approved drug that has been shown to work in clinical trials, and so and at the end of the day, it is a relatively small number of patients. So. Right,
and the CFO, I believe, Marathon CFO, called this relatively reasonable for an orphan drug, is how he described it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the type of drug that is used by a very small number of patients. Is that
It is. I mean, orphan drugs, we typically talk about sort of new drugs to treat very, very rare diseases that really have no other treatment options.
Right.
This is a case where you're sort of taking a drug that was developed years and years ago for a completely different reason and finding that it has some efficacy within this patient population.
Still, do you think that Marathon was a little, I'm sure, cautious stepping into the firestorm that pharmaceutical companies have been facing right now over pricing? They didn't seem to be worried about it.
I don't know. They might have priced the drug much higher had this controversy not happened. I mean, the company is certainly aware of sort of this debate that's happening right now, and I think are trying to be sensitive to it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, this is the system, and this is a system that we have, and I think they would say they're playing by the rules of the game that has been created by Congress.
Right. All right, Joe Walker, thank you so much
Pleasure.
for your insight on that.